A billionaire's unexpected discovery. Virgin surrogate reveals life-changing secret instantly. Jack Lawson stared at the portfolio spread across his mahogany desk, yet his focus repeatedly drifted beyond the meticulously arranged papers. The luxurious decor of his Atlanta office couldn't mask the growing emptiness inside him, an ache amplified by the recent loss of his only son. The void gnawed at his chest, challenging his belief that wealth could insulate him from sorrow. In the wake of that family tragedy, he found himself in desperate pursuit of something, anything, that could reintroduce warmth to his cold and sterile existence. With a resigned sigh, he had agreed to hire a virgin surrogate named Maria. She was an embodiment of everything he had left behind: resilience, hard work, and the kind of love that crept in around life's edges. Initially, their relationship was strictly business, a transaction devoid of emotions. Jack maintained his layered facade, dictating every meeting with an icy precision that ensured he remained detached from the girl carrying his child's life. But as weeks passed, the objectivity he portrayed began to slip. Today, she arrived with a wide-eyed excitement that rubbed uncomfortably against his carefully structured world. "You should see the little kicks." Maria smiled, her enthusiasm filling the room like sunlight piercing clouds. He tightened his jaw, resisting the warmth her spirit sought to coax from him, demanding he acknowledge the innocence that still thrived beyond his corporate empire. Before he could respond, an unsettling thought seeped in. Would this child grow up under the shadow of his wealth, oblivious to the struggles of their roots? He had blocked out the memories of his own humble upbringing, a world far removed from board meetings and glossy magazine features. Life then had been filled with laughter, without the icy gaze of a bottom line lurking behind every gesture. This dilemma buried itself deeper into Jack's consciousness, twisting into guilt as he questioned his professional achievements. Was his accumulated power more a monument to success or a prison of his own making? Before we continue, I need to tell you about something important that's happening. YouTube has been making changes to the system, and many people are losing notifications from channels they follow. If you're enjoying the content, click the bell and mark all notifications so you don't miss the next videos. And if you can leave a like, it really helps with reach. Seriously, it makes a difference. Oh, tell me in the comments where you're watching from. I'm always curious to know who's on the other side of the screen. Now let's continue. 2 coffee cups sat silently on the table as they navigated this delicate line. With each passing doctor's appointment, her stories of family sacrifices began to weave around his heart, shaking loose the stone-cold armor he had so carefully constructed. But then she dropped a bombshell. She was the granddaughter of a brilliant inventor whose life work had been stolen by a corporate giant, one he knew far too well. The mere mention of her grandfather's fate sent shockwaves through Jack, revealing the reality of injustice lurking beneath his glossy surface. A pang of anguish seized him. How had he forged this empire? The stakes were higher now. Could he just return to chasing profits? It felt like running on a treacherous path, and the shadows of his past loomed larger. Jack opened his mouth, wanting to protect the child, the woman before him, a connection that suddenly felt more important than the empire he had built. "What kind of legacy do you want to leave behind?" Maria asked, her voice breaking through his spiraling thoughts like a siren in the night. Caught in that moment of raw vulnerability, he felt the weight of her question press heavy against his chest, creating an insatiable tension within him. Jack stood at the crossroads of a decision, one that could either cement him in a cycle of hollow success or forge a path illuminated by integrity. The promise of wealth now felt more like shackles than trophies, and deep down, he feared what lay on the other side of clarity. As Jack absorbed Maria's question, the room seemed to constrict around him. The air thickened with unspoken possibilities, and his analytical mind wrestled with the implications of such an inquiry. Legacy was not a term he had delved into deeply. It felt distant, like something meant for historians and dreamers, not a man so entrenched in metrics and quarterly reports. But here it was, crashing into his concepts of success and wealth. Jack hesitated, reluctant to unveil his innermost thoughts. Fragments of memories stirred, Family dinners filled with laughter, a father's wise counsel, and a mother's unwavering support. Those days felt like remnants of a life he had willingly sacrificed on the altar of ambition, the kind that had led him to this colossal yet hollow fortress he called a life. "What if," he started, his voice barely above a whisper, "what if the legacy I leave is one of greed?" Maria's eyes softened, but there was a determination there that somehow calmed him. "It doesn't have to be. You can choose." "Choose? After everything I've built?" His heart raced. She was throwing down a gauntlet, and he wasn't sure he was ready to pick it up. The weight of his decisions loomed larger with every beat. "Everything you built started somewhere, right? Would your father have wanted you to forget that?" Her question ignited something in him, an ember of reality he had buried under years of ambition, and relentless focus erupted into view. He thought back to those family dinners, where stories of perseverance were as common as the dishes that graced their table. He was the first to break free from the cycle of struggle, but in doing so he had turned away from the very foundation that made him who he was. "What can I do differently, Maria?" The vulnerability in his voice surprised him. This was an unfamiliar territory, one that crossed the lines he had drawn so carefully over the years between business and personal. "Acknowledge your roots. Invest in something meaningful. Ensure your child knows where they come from," she said, her voice steady, confident. "Maybe you can even start by helping inventor projects like my grandfather's. You could make a difference, Jack." Her words struck a chord deep within him, a resonance that challenged everything he thought he had known about success. The idea of investing in others, of nurturing talent, of righting wrongs, became a tidal wave crashing against the island of his isolated existence. There lay a potential for healing, a way to breathe life back into the worlds he had ignored for too long, but uncertainty gnawed at him. Would it be too late to redefine his legacy? What if the men who admired him became mere footnotes in a narrative of redemption rather than pillars of success? The very thought stirred panic in Jack's core, yet beneath the fear lay a flicker of hope, the kind that could ignite a revolution within himself. As he leaned back, contemplating the path forward, the weight of the decision pressed down upon him. It felt both exhilarating and terrifying. In that moment, a singular truth resonated profoundly. He faced not only an opportunity for change, but a responsibility to the child yet unborn, one who could inherit a world vastly different from his own. Fueled by this newfound urgency, he looked at Maria, ready to embrace the challenge before him. "Let's do this together," he said, his voice firm, the sense of partnership igniting between them. But as clarity began to seep into his plans, an unanticipated notification pinged on his phone, a familiar name flashing angrily across the screen. The corporate giant that had wronged Maria's grandfather was coming to collect on its own past debts. The path of redemption was about to ignite a confrontation he was utterly unprepared for. Would this meeting unveil hidden truths, or shutter the door to possibility? Jack felt a sharp pang in his chest as the notification blinked ominously on his screen. It served as a stark reminder of the harsh realities of the business world that he had chosen to navigate. The corporate giant's name loomed large, a specter of his past dealings, and he could almost feel the weight of its judgment pressing down on him. The meeting was set for tomorrow morning. He had no choice but to confront the ghosts he had buried under layers of ambition. "Is everything okay?" Maria's voice brought him back, grounding him in the present. Jack took a deep breath, forcing himself to focus. "I'll deal with it," he replied, attempting to project confidence. But internally, anxiety stirred clouds of uncertainty. "Deal with it? You mean brush it aside?" she challenged, not letting him escape so easily. "This is connected to everything we just discussed." Her words ignited a flicker of anger within him. Was she really implying that the corporate clout he once wielded needed his moral compass? He shook his head, fighting against the tide of defensiveness rising in him. Their new venture was intended to initiate a change, a way to build some form of legacy. Yet, here he was, tethered to the very system he intended to critique. "I can't just ignore this," he conceded, a mix of frustration and vulnerability. "It's complicated. Complicated or convenient? Maria's eyes narrowed slightly, demanding a deeper commitment from him. Her question pierced through the fog. Jack felt layers of complacency stripped away. The truth was, he had allowed his ambition to blind him, using the complexities of his world as an excuse to avoid accountability. He had built a towering empire, but at what cost? And what kind of man would he be if he didn't stand up to confront those who had misused their power and authority? What do I even have left to fight for? The incredulity seeped into his voice. Maria stepped closer, reinforcing their connection. You have your values. You have an opportunity to do something right. You have me. Her unwavering gaze held his, and in it he found a semblance of strength. The enormity of the moment crushed down on him. Could he really pivot from a lifetime of self-interest toward a cause that could redefine who he was? The vision of helping Maria's grandfather's project started to weave itself into a broader narrative, a movement that could potentially confront large, unethical corporations, reinvesting profits into real human ingenuity. Jack knew the stakes were high. He could lose everything, his reputation, his wealth, his standing in a cutthroat world. Yet he also realized that what could emerge from this confrontation was worth more than the skyscrapers that would fall in his climb. With renewed determination swelling in his chest, he felt something shift within. You're right, he finally admitted, the words transforming his fear into resolve. I have to face them, but not just to settle old scores. I need to make this personal. I need to change the conversation. Maria smiled, a reflection of shared purpose igniting between them. As they began crafting a plan, Jack felt the currents of his past colliding with the possibilities of his future. Each strategic decision formed a bridge, leading him back to the man he once aspired to be. The dichotomy of his legacy pressed heavily, but within that weight, he found clarity. He reached for his phone, ready to confront the powers that be, when another disturbing message lit up the screen, a warning from a trusted colleague that their company was under scrutiny. The implications were dire, hinting at a possible scandal that could derail not just his plans, but Maria's grandfather's project as well. Could he navigate this storm while remaining true to his newfound purpose? It was a delicate balance that could alter the trajectory of both their lives, and Jack understood the urgency had never been greater. The clock was ticking, and as the sun dipped low on the horizon, a question hung in the air like thunder. What if this was the moment that changed everything? As the evening deepened, a sense of urgency propelled Jack forward. The flickering screen held his attention. His fingers hesitated above the keypad. He needed to assemble a strategy that not only addressed the impending scandal, but also secured a foundation for the project that had reignited his passion. His mind raced. What role could he assume in the impending storm? Perhaps a proactive stance would steer the narrative. As he considered the implications, Jack grasped the fundamental change that had begun to take root in him. He was no longer just a businessman safeguarding his empire, but a man willing to stake his reputation on doing what was right. Let's focus on damage control, he suggested to Maria, who had paced restlessly around the room, her own concern reflecting in her furrowed brow. I need to reach out to key contacts, stakeholders who might be affected by any fallout. We can spin this debate to our advantage. Maria crossed her arms, studying him with an intensity that felt like a challenge. Or you could take the opportunity to be transparent, to be the voice of change instead of just defending your position. Customers respect authenticity more than you know, especially now. Her words struck a chord. Transparency had always been an area he'd avoided, the repercussions of honesty too convoluted for his previous ambitions. But if he wanted to redefine success, he needed to embody that very principle. You're right, he conceded slowly, feeling the weight of her gaze urging him to take ownership. I have to prepare to face those consequences. As they mapped out a plan, Jack realized the many facets of his identity were colliding. The old Jack, wary, calculating, dual in spirit with the new Jack, eager to forge a genuine legacy. He contemplated how to unravel the manipulative tactics he had once employed, and instead communicate a narrative of renewal. The glimpse of vulnerability was daunting but invigorating, as if he were shedding an old skin. Hours later, after formulating a possible press statement and drafting messages to allies who could potentially support the project, Jack felt a mix of anticipation and anxiety. His hands fumbled over the keyboard. It was one thing to plan. Executing those plans felt like launching into the unknown. "I'm ready," he finally said, finding a moment to catch Maria's eye. They both knew the path ahead was murky, fraught with challenges, yet some part of him had shed the old fears and anticipations, embracing the idea of reclaiming his narrative. "We're going public." "Jack," she hesitated, searching his face. "This is not just about the project anymore, is it?" "No," he responded firmly, an unexpected conviction brewing within him. "It's about proving that change is possible, not just for us, but to show others that they can challenge the status quo too." Maria's expression softened, admiration replacing previous doubt. "You're growing. I can see it." Her belief sparked something deeper in him. He had not only committed to transparency, he had recommitted to the core values of integrity and accountability that he had long buried. But a troubling thought crept into his mind. How would those powerful forces react to this shift? As he finally hit send on the press release, a single glance out the window revealed a night opaque with potential, but also foreboding. The hardened edges of his past loomed in the distance, reminding him of the stakes involved. The moment he clicked send was significant, a vivid, albeit terrifying, embodiment of a new resolve. Yet with each heartbeat, the impending backlash weighed heavily on him. The notification chimed once more, a response from the corporate giant indicating that they had observed his public address. "They're watching," he murmured, the reality of his situation settling into his chest like a lead weight. Turning to Maria, Jack realized the road ahead was lined not just with peril, but with the chance to redefine the very essence of power in their world. The question remained, would he stand firm against those who might wield their strength to crush him, or would he rise to meet their challenge head-on? With the stakes raised and a reckoning looming, Jack prepared to confront the real test of his newly embraced ideals. There was no turning back now. Everything hinged on the moment ahead, and he was ready to face whatever came next. The following days unfolded like a taut string on the verge of snapping. Jack immersed himself in a whirlwind of activity, fielding inquiries and media requests, while meticulously shielding his weakened position. What had once been a haven where power seemed absolute now felt like quicksand beneath his feet. Each decision, every word delivered in meetings with stakeholders, echoed in his mind, amplifying his resolve and uncertainty. Facing the press that first time, Jack had sensed the sharp eyes of the journalists, ready to dissect every syllable. He could have shrouded his words in the comfortable haze of corporate jargon, but instead, he spoke honestly. The questions were merciless, a barrage of skepticism aimed at both his motives and his past. Still, he stood his ground, driven by the change he yearned to project. When he dismissed falsehoods and claimed accountability, a flicker of something profound churned in his gut, a mix of fear and exhilaration. In those moments, Jack realized he was not merely defending himself, he was transforming under the pressure. As he reviewed the coverages, he noted the shifting perceptions. Some applauded his courage, while others mocked his efforts, framing him as a desperate man trying to save face. Each article was like a mirror reflecting back parts of himself he had long suppressed. The ambitious tycoon, yes, but also the misunderstood individual seeking redemption. The internal struggle clawed at his psyche, compelling him to wrestle with whether he was truly on the path to something genuine or simply playing an elaborate role. In his conversations with Maria, he began to articulate a new mission that went beyond financial success, creating a template for authenticity in their industry. "People want leaders who are real," he told her, the truth settling comfortably on his tongue. "They want to see vulnerability in the face of a mighty corporation. We can be that change." But what did that change look like, free from the manipulation that once clouded his vision? In the quiet hours alone in his office, he wrestled with this nebulous challenge. It was thrilling, yet deeply unsettling. Could he actually be the architect of something transformative? Or was he destined to be crushed beneath the weight of the entrenched powers within his industry? A crucial meeting loomed on the calendar with the corporate giant that had once been his closest partner, but was now his fiercest scrutinizer. Jack felt the tension rise in his chest as he contemplated their notorious reputation for ruthlessness. They were watching him closely, waiting for him to falter so they could reclaim their narrative. To think he once had a comfortable partnership with them was now overwhelmingly ironic. As the day of the meeting approached, Jack sought solace in the fleeting memories of his childhood, the lessons his father had instilled in him about integrity and standing up for what was right. Those ideals had faded in the pursuit of wealth, but resurfaced with a burning insistence now. There had to be a way to maintain his principles while grappling with the very real threat of financial loss and loss of reputation. "Your past doesn't have to dictate your future," he recalled his father's words, a mantra that resonated deeply in his heart. The key would lie in confronting this corporate behemoth head-on, not as the shadow of fear he once embodied, but as a leader unafraid to act with integrity, ready to face the consequences. The night before the meeting, he felt an unusual mix of apprehension and excitement. As he reviewed his presentation for what felt like the 100th time, he paused, recognizing a pivotal moment before him. The gravity of the situation pressed on him. He could hear the buried whispers of doubt threatening to rear their heads. But he had a new resolve, one forged in the fires of communication and accountability. Jack inhaled deeply, weighing the magnitude of this confrontation. In this new chapter of his life, he would either reinforce the ideals he had pledged to uphold or watch as they crumbled under pressure. He needed to prepare himself for both inspiration and conflict while fortified against the potential fallout of speaking the truth. As dawn broke, he stood before the mirror, a reflective recognition washing over him. The moment had come. Would he reclaim his narrative in this power struggle, or succumb to the very forces he sought to challenge? With his heart racing, he stepped out into the light, because the time had arrived to face those who would challenge his newfound commitment to authenticity. The moment of confrontation awaited him, and he sensed the stakes were about to rise even higher. Jack entered the conference room, every corner echoing the whispers of high-stakes deals that had shaped his career. The massive table, glossy and imposing, stood as a barrier, a symbol of power that it felt almost absurd for him to face without a veneer of his former bravado. He caught sight of the opposing team, their faces a blend of skepticism and amusement, devoid of sympathy. This was more than a meeting. It was a test of his conviction. He began with a steady voice, outlining a vision intertwined with transparency and authenticity, core beliefs that had transformed his outlook. The statement hung in the air, both inviting and accusatory, as their eyes narrowed, dissecting both his words and the man behind them. Jack engaged as much with their reactions as with his presentation. Each raised eyebrow, each exchanged glance, added to the atmosphere of tension, underscoring his fragile stance. As he progressed, an unexpected realization surged through him. This was not just a presentation. It was a declaration of war against years of obfuscation and superficiality. They challenged him, ripping apart his arguments with calculated blows, each question probing deeper than the last, a relentless reminder of all he had to lose. With each corrective response, Jack felt a deeper understanding of his own capabilities blossom, a resolve to not just withstand their scrutiny, but to redefine the conversation itself. In a pivotal moment, he rebutted a pointed criticism regarding his past decisions, stating, "I've made mistakes, yes, but I'm ready to change the narrative and lead differently." The words hung in the air, stark and unapologetic. The silence that followed was heavy. It was as if he had stripped away a layer of pretense from the room. The meeting shifted. Jack noticed the dynamic change subtly. Skepticism began to mix with curiosity, and for the first time, a crack appeared in the facade of indifference among his adversaries. He pondered if they sensed something powerful was taking shape, not just a strategy, but a vision imbued with a newfound moral clarity that could resonate beyond conference walls. After the session concluded, the corporate giant's lead negotiator approached him, an expression of begrudging respect flickering behind their steely facade. You've got guts, Jack. But this industry doesn't embrace vulnerability. It devours it. Jack exhaled, the word vulnerability echoing in his mind like a challenge. He leaned into the statement. Maybe that's the change we need then. Maybe authenticity won't drive us apart, but could unite our goals. He was surprised at how boldly the words flowed, driven by his evolving understanding of leadership. As they began to leave, Maria caught up with him, her brows knitted in contemplation. You really held your own, Jack. But how do you plan to maintain this momentum? The opponents won't just accept this shift without a fight. Her inquiry posed a critical dilemma, forcing him to weigh ambition against the risk of backlash. Jack had faced adversaries countless times, but this was the first where the fight was also within himself. I'm still figuring it out, he admitted, surprised by his own honesty. The admission tasted both raw and liberating. Yet within that sense of vulnerability lay the very sword he needed to carve out a new legacy, leveraging moments of honesty as virtues rather than vulnerabilities. That night, he dissected the day's events, wrestling with the implications of making his internal shifts visible. As the moonlight seeped through his window, illuminating his office, he realized that this was more than a professional journey. It was a quest for personal redemption and a fierce defense of integrity. Tomorrow's battles loomed larger than today's, and amidst the internal and external challenges, Jack felt the weight of conscious change settle into his bones. He had taken steps toward rewriting not just his story but potentially the entire landscape of his industry. The heart of every confrontation remained tethered to a deeper moral imperative. The future was no longer just about winning or losing, but about genuinely becoming a leader worth following. The thought lingered, burning bright in his mind. Could he truly pave the way for transformative change, and what sacrifices would he need to endure along the way? What would be the price of authenticity in an arena dominated by pretense? With these reflections fueling a restless resolve, he turned off the lights, stepping into the shadows, ready to confront what awaited him in the days ahead. Jack awoke the next morning with a jolt, fully aware that today would be critical. The remnants of yesterday's revelations echoed in his mind as he hurriedly prepared for the day ahead. He felt an urgency, a sense that integrity and authenticity had been ignited as his guiding principles, and that every choice made from this point would forge a path into uncharted territory. As he navigated his routine, his thoughts spiraled around strategies for broadening the vision he had planted during the conference meeting. He envisioned follow-up discussions where he could cultivate alliances rather than enemies. Jack questioned how he could maintain the momentum sparked by his admission of vulnerability. It was not merely about defense, it was about expanding his influence strategically, even among those who might still view him as an adversary. Arriving at the office, he noted the buzzing energy in the halls. Colleagues chatted enthusiastically, and the air was charged, potential swirling everywhere. He took a moment to ground himself, placing a hand lightly on his desk as if drawing strength from its solid surface. It was time to craft his narrative not just for external eyes, but also for his team. After all, he was no longer just a figure leading from a mountaintop. He now saw himself as a conduit of change. "Jack, can we talk?" Lisa, one of his direct reports, approached him. Her face conveyed a mix of concern and curiosity, echoing the questions that swirled in his mind. They stepped into a conference room, the glass walls providing transparency, but also a sense of isolation. "What's on your mind?" he asked, leaning against the table, already keenly aware that her inquiry had significance. "I heard about the meeting yesterday," she began cautiously. "You really laid it out there. I just wonder, are you prepared for any fallout? Some in the company see vulnerability as weakness." Jack's instinct was to reassure her, yet the truth of her words cut deep. The survival instinct kicked in, a reminder of looming consequences for stepping out of the corporate playbook. He knew he had to tread carefully, but felt the need to lean into this discomfort. "Maybe we need to redefine what it means to be strong," he replied, meeting her gaze directly, his voice steady. There was power in his resolve, even as uncertainty swirled. Lisa contemplated his response, and a flicker of understanding danced across her features. "That's a challenge, but if you face the pushback, the risk could bring us closer as a team. You're asking us to be genuine, and that's not easy." Her insight reminded him of the conundrum he faced. not solely with the external opposition, but also with internal resistance to change. He realized that his journey was a shared path, laden with risk, but also immense potential for growth. "Let's start having open dialogues," Jack suggested. "We can create a space where honesty doesn't feel like a liability, but rather a strength." As the conversation progressed, Jack found himself outlining a plan, not merely for managing the aftermath of his bold exposure, but for fostering a culture that embraced vulnerability. He envisioned workshops, brainstorming sessions, anything to build bridges across the divides that defined their corporate culture. After Lisa left, he sat alone, absorbed in thought. He began drafting ideas for a company-wide meeting, crafting a speech where he would cultivate this vision of authenticity. The stakes were high, and he knew it would put him directly in the crosshairs. But as he sketched his thoughts, a tantalizing sense of possibility unfolded alongside unease. Just as he began to gather momentum, an unexpected email landed in his inbox. A request for a pivotal meeting. His ex-boss wanted to reconnect. The old tensions stirred in Jack's chest. Was this an attempt to undermine him or an olive branch? As he pondered the implications, the tension heightened. Jack sensed that whatever awaited him could either strengthen or shatter the foundations he had begun building. He realized that every step from here on was fraught with potential risk. The very act of pursuing authenticity might attract scrutiny from the past, but it was still a price worth paying. With a deep, grounding breath, Jack prepared to face the consequences of his choices. A confrontation with not only his past, but also with a chance to shape a new future. Would he rise or fall in the eyes of his former superior? He would need more than just courage. He would need to summon every bit of the resolve he had found within himself. As he drafted a response to the meeting request, Jack felt the stirring of both excitement and dread. The moment approached when he would be called to reconcile the man he once was with the leader he aspired to be. Would he step forward into the light or retreat into the shadows of his past? The pivotal decision loomed. Tonight's meeting could change everything. With the weight of impending confrontation just around the corner, Jack was ready. The battle was about to escalate, and he would face it head-on. Jack sat at his desk, the glow of the computer screen illuminating a sea of thoughts tethered to the coming confrontation. The email from his ex-boss lingered like a storm cloud above him, casting shadows on the new foundation he aimed to build. It was a test, an opportunity to assert his growth, or a trap to unearth his insecurities. He felt a visceral pulse of anxiety, but resolved to lean into it instead of allowing it to paralyze him. He gathered his notes and began piecing together the framework for his upcoming company-wide meeting. The act of writing became cathartic as he articulated his vision of authenticity. Each sentence was imbued with purpose, each point a brick in the wall he envisioned surrounding himself, reinforcement against the potential pushback he might receive. But amidst his planning, the looming meeting occupied his mind relentlessly. It wasn't just a simple catch-up with a former superior. It represented a fracture in his career, old grievances, public embarrassment, and the suffocating pressure of corporate politics. He fought the urge to quail at the thought of how his former boss might respond to his newfound philosophy of vulnerability. Would he see it as weakness or be impressed by his transformation? He decided he needed to confront this fear head-on. Perhaps the key was to redefine his approach to this meeting, not as a reconciliation of past dynamics, but as another opportunity to model the openness he wished to propagate. Jack stood up, paced the office, and envisioned what he might say. What if he could demonstrate the authenticity he preached? The idea ignited a flicker of excitement. He grabbed a notepad and outlined key points. He would approach the conversation not just to defend his choices, but to extend an olive branch, to express his willingness to change the narrative of their relationship. By doing so, he would not only advocate for himself, but also demonstrate how courage and honesty could pave the way for progressive dialogue, something he desperately craved in his work environment. Just before lunch, he glanced at the clock, realizing that his preparatory time was dwindling. He sent a brief response, confirming the meeting and suggesting they meet at a neutral space, a local cafe, not the corporate confines where past disagreements had festered. Setting the terms felt empowering, a subtle reclamation of agency in his life. At lunch, Jack's head buzzed with confident resolve as he shared his thoughts with a couple of colleagues. Their encouragement bolstered his belief that change could manifest in many forms. Every nod and word of support fueled his fire, and he felt that each passing moment drew him closer to his aspiration of authentic leadership. Post-lunch, he reviewed his notes once more, sharpening not just the content, but his delivery. The tension of the impending meeting swelled and settled into a sense of driving purpose. Jack was prepared to address the past head-on. This was not merely about personal reconciliation but professional evolution. As the clock ticked closer to the meeting time, a final wash of nerves hit him. He caught sight of Lisa in the hallway, her face lighting up as she approached with a sunny greeting. Their brief exchange reminded him of what was at stake. Her faith in him made his determination climb higher. "Are you good to go?" she asked, her eyes searching his for reassurance. "I am," he replied, his voice steady despite his racing heart. Stepping out of his comfort zone became a mantra, a promise to himself to confront and not retreat. Jack inhaled deeply, centering himself. A feeling of excitement washed over him as he walked towards the meeting. This was not just about repairing fissures from the past. It was a chance to lay the groundwork for the leader he truly aspired to be. A risk worth taking, no matter the outcome. As Jack approached the cafe entrance, however, an unexpected twist awaited. A familiar face stepped ahead of him, a figure from his past who embodied everything he was trying to move beyond. The weight of old grievances threatened to crash over him. Would this twist derail everything he had built up to this moment? He steadied himself, preparing not just for a conversation but for a reckoning. He took another breath. The moment of truth was at hand. Jack's heart raced as he stood frozen in place, the weight of his past crashing down around him like a tidal wave. The figure before him was his former mentor Ted, who had once set the course for Jack's career but had also been the architect of countless frustrations. This wasn't a casual encounter. This was a collision of their histories, a potential detonation of all the progress he had fought for. Ted's eyes met Jack's, an expression flickering between curiosity and cautious amusement. "Jack?" Ted exclaimed, a sardonic smile creeping onto his face. "Didn't expect to see you here." "Yeah, well, I'm just passing through," Jack managed to respond, forcing his voice to stay level. Beneath the surface, doubt bubbled. Had Ted somehow sensed Jack's tumultuous journey? Was this chance encounter fate or merely a cruel twist of irony? He contemplated fleeing, but that would only fortify the narrative of a timid Jack who shied away from discomfort. Instead, he leaned into his discomfort, preparing for this unexpected test. "Looks like you're on your way to bigger things. I hear you're leading the company meeting today," Ted said, his tone a mix of challenge and sarcasm. "I am," Jack replied, steadiness seeping into his words. "It's time for a new approach in our leadership." The words felt like stepping stones, a foundation he needed to reinforce. Ted arched an eyebrow, as if surprised by the assertion. "Oh, really? I didn't think you had it in you. Last I recall, vulnerable leadership wasn't exactly your style." Jack felt that barbed sting, layered with years of shared insecurities and competition. Yet, he fought the urge to retreat into his old defensive shell. "Things change, Ted. People change. I'm trying to embrace a more authentic path for myself and for our team." A flicker of intrigue crossed Ted's face, but it was quickly masked by an expression of skepticism. "Authenticity, is that what they call it now? Seems a little soft for this cutthroat world." Jack's heart thumped harder. Each word from Ted was a heavyweight, yet it sparked a renewed sense of obligation to himself. "Soft or not, it's what I believe in. I can't lead authentically if I'm still shackled by our past." "You think you can redefine the narrative by simply changing your tone? You really believe that's enough?" Ted challenged, probing deeper into the rawness of Jack's thoughts. The confrontation ignited something deep within Jack. Clarity. "I think it's about more than tone. It's about courage," he replied, feeling a pulse of fierce determination. "It's about what we stand for as leaders. If I fail, at least I can say I stood in my truth." Silence stretched between them, the air thick with unresolved tension and shared history. Jack took a shallow breath, cultivating the energy around his newfound resolve. The sensation of standing firm in his belief washed over him, an ethereal strength that felt foreign yet empowering. Then, like a mirror reflecting back years of conflicts, Ted's demeanor shifted. "You may have a point, Jack. Maybe it is time for a refresh in leadership. It could be just what you need to grow into the role." The acknowledgement felt less like victory and more like an invitation to further dialogue. As the layers of past indignities began to peel away in that moment, Jack was struck by the significance of this conversation. He wasn't merely fighting for validation anymore. He was forging a path for his future self, a future leader anchored in authenticity. Before Jack could respond, Ted turned, glancing over his shoulder as he stepped back into the bustling cafe, leaving Jack suspended in a moment of realization. The confrontation had transformed him. He had officially stared down his past and emerged willing to face his future. A tide of hope surged within him, mingled with apprehension and excitement for what lay ahead. As he gathered himself and resumed his journey inside, a sense of urgency took hold. He could no longer afford to tiptoe around what his leadership could be. The journey began now. He pushed through the cafe door, his thoughts racing ahead to the meeting waiting inside, marked by potential yet shadowed by a lingering question. Would he truly embody the leader he aspired to be, or would the past catch up with him once more? The moment had arrived, and every ounce of conviction would be tested. Jack walked in with palpable confidence, a shift from the power suits he had once spun into armor. The cafe buzzed with conversation, yet the air around him pulsed with his heartbeat, a reminder that today could reshape the future not just for him, but for the organization he led. The journey of self-actualization he embarked on had morphed from a simple desire for redemption to a compelling drive for transformative leadership. As he approached the table where his team was gathered, he scanned the faces, each one a facet of his past and present. They looked expectant, their expressions a blend of curiosity and wariness. He felt a collective inhalation. They sensed something monumental was about to unfold. "Thank you all for coming today," he began, his voice steady but warm. "I want to share where I stand on leadership and the way forward for us as a team." He paused, drawing on the courage he had harnessed. "I've made mistakes, and I've built a reputation on ambitions that often overshadowed the very foundation of who we are. Today I am committed to forging a new path, one rooted in authenticity, transparency, and accountability." Jack's words resonated with the gravity of sincerity. He saw the subtle shifts among his colleagues. Skepticism was replaced by intrigue, and unspoken tensions began to dissipate. The moment felt monumental, not because he was speaking, but because he was truly connecting. "Change isn't easy," he continued, allowing vulnerability to slip into his narrative. "But I believe that by fostering a culture of openness and dialogue, we elevate not just ourselves, but our organization. I want us to move beyond the corporate facade, creating a space where each of us feels empowered to be genuine." Several hands shot up, eager voices breaking through the initial silence. "How do we ensure that this isn't just talk?" one team member asked. Jack welcomed the question, seeing it as a sign of engagement. "By holding each other accountable. If we commit to a shared journey of growth, we must speak up when we see fear reclaiming our narratives. We can embrace vulnerability without fearing it. I want to lead by example in that regard." As he navigated through their questions, every exchange reinforced his burgeoning belief. Each inquiry challenged him to dive deeper into his principles, and he discovered newfound satisfaction in their shared commitment to change. "Let's plan workshops, roundtable discussions, and feedback sessions in which everyone's voice is realized," he proposed. "We need to come together not just as workers, but as partners in this enterprise." He wrapped up the meeting, heart racing not with anxiety, but with confidence. "Together, we can not only shift our narrative, but redefine what it means to lead in our industry." A wave of applause engulfed him, a validation of the direction he had chosen. It was not mere acknowledgement, it was recognition, a collective commitment to a renewed identity. In that moment, Jack felt an overwhelming sense of fulfillment. He had conquered not just the fears that plagued him, but also the legacy of self-interest that he had previously struggled to escape. The connection formed with his team transcended any previous relationships built on power and ambition. They were now bound by shared ideals and mutual aspirations. As he left the cafe, a notification on his phone caught his eye. It was an incoming response from Ted, inviting him to a follow-up meeting, acknowledging Jack's resolve and the potential in forging a new partnership. Jack smiled, feeling as though the universe recognized his commitment to authenticity. Every step I take now isn't solely about navigating challenges, but about charting a course towards legacy, he murmured to himself, a realization settling warmly within him. He had embarked on an irrevocable journey, and for the first time in years, he felt truly alive. The shadows of doubt faded, replaced by the sunlight of newfound purpose, illuminating a path not just to success, but to a legacy defined by integrity, resilience, and genuine connection. Jack Lawson had finally reclaimed his narrative, one of authenticity, and with it, a solidified sense of self-empowerment that extended beyond the confines of mere financial victories. He was not just a man of wealth, but a leader committed to a cause greater than himself. The possibilities ahead stretched out like an uncharted horizon, inviting him to continue growing, evolving, and leading with purpose. To all who resonate with the power of transformation, this is your call to action. Subscribe immediately to the channel to not miss the next exclusive emotional stories that can inspire your journey. Leave a like now to feed the algorithm. This moment is crucial to share meaningful content. Comment below your reactions and theories about Jack's powerful transformation, because your perspective matters. And don't wait even one more second to share this video with at least 5 friends who need to experience this inspiring conclusion. True fans of personal overcoming stories know the importance of supporting the channel through these actions.